Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Spehar Initiative. I am your host, Rob Spehar. I'm here with another good episode. When you come onto this podcast, you tend to hear different stories. You tend to hear different things that many people are not willing to talk about, not coming face to face with. And this episode is no different. Today, I'm talking about literature and freedom. So when I say literature, I want to give you a little bit of context here. And it's a book that's going to be coming out. It's called The Sovereign. So I'm reading right now the Amazon description of it. And I want to let all the viewers and listeners know. The authors of this book share their journeys to personal freedom and what it means for them. For some, the decision to enact change came after a single event that caused their intuition to roar with a reverberating signal to shift gears and live courageously. For others, a lifetime of instinctual alarms invited them to step into a deeper state of volition. These authors, once strangers, came together to co-create this book by no accident, but to give you the green light to lead your own life with confidence, conviction, and freedom as well. So that's just a brief summary of what this book is about. And as you can see beside me, I have one of those lovely authors with me. And please welcome to the show, Holly Schefold. Holly, thank you very much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
So when I was reading that description, it wasn't author, it was plural form authors. And you're one of these 15 authors who've offered their stories about what has happened in your life for the last few years in Canada, specifically since 2019, since the pandemic has begun. And these are authors from all across Canada. So can you tell myself and everybody watching and listening a little bit about the book, its purpose, and how you became part of that group?
Yeah, so the book is an anthology, which means each chapter is written by a different author. Each chapter is like its own story unto itself. So there's 15 of us all across Canada. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I think everybody is in Alberta or Ontario, and there's one woman from Manitoba, and there's one male. So it's not all women either, which is nice. Jeff's our token male. So we're well balanced. Yeah, how I got into it. There was a woman I was following on Instagram, sort of around the time of the Freedom Convoy last year, like in the January, February. She was covering a lot of that movement, and I was following her. And so to go back, I was watching the police movement on Ottawa. Let's get right into it, right? And I watched that woman get trampled by the horse, that Native woman.
Yep.
And I then the next day or that evening, I saw a statement put out by one mainstream media outlet and also the Ottawa Police Unit, and they were both saying the exact same thing, and that was someone threw a bike at the horse and it took the horse down. And I literally watched that unfold on live feed, and I was like, that is not what happened there. I watched that horse trampled the woman, and it wasn't a bicycle, that was her walker. And so it blew my mind that, like, wow, they're not telling the truth about this. And if they're not telling the truth about this, what else in history haven't they told the truth about, where we didn't have the live feeds? So I decided I needed to start like writing everything down, like my experience through the last few years, so that when my kids or my grandkids were to say, what happened, they would have this account of my reflection of what happened. So my friends knew that I was doing that. And anyhow, fast forward, Sarah Swain had put out a post saying, would anybody be interested if I wrote a book, would anybody be interested in sharing their story? And it was sort of a journey to personal freedom was the basis behind the book. And so a few of my friends nudged me and said, you have to do this, because they knew that I was already writing. And so I did. I applied and had an interview and was chosen as one of the 15.
Nice. No, it's awesome. And I haven't read your part of it, but I've heard some snippets. I've heard the audio version of it. Great voice, by the way. Just saying.
Thanks.
And I look forward to it when it comes out. But you yourself, like, we've known each other for a while because my kids went to a school that you were a part of. And yeah, we said hi and we've crossed paths in the mornings and stuff and everything, but we never really actually sat down and spoke. And the last few times that you and I have sat down and talked, we've talked for a good couple of hours, and it's great. I love hearing you talk. I love hearing your stories, where you've come from, what you're doing with your cooking, which we're going to get into that as well. Can you tell us a little bit where you, like, when I mentioned the school, you were formerly employed. Can you tell us a little bit what happened, how everything transpired, and why you're formerly employed now?
Yeah, so I did work at a school for a long time. I was at this one particular school for 15 years, and it was my whole world. My kids went to the school, it was an entire community, right? And we always said we were a family, we took care of each other and blah, blah, blah. So anyhow, it was also, I felt a place where you could think critically, and we taught children how to think critically and whatnot. So in the spring of 2021, I guess it was right after the vaccine started rolling out. I think they started rolling out in January, and this was about the spring of that year. And all of the staff members were running to get their vaccines, and everybody was really happy about it. And just something wasn't sitting right with me. And I thought, I'm just going to wait this out a little bit. I don't know. Like, I just had this feeling in my gut that something wasn't right and that I should wait. And so I did. I waited. Didn't really talk to my boss about anything. But however, there were other staff members that I would chat with about questioning things. And, why are they lying about the number of people that are in hospital with COVID? Why are they calling them all COVID admissions just because they maybe have tested for it but don't have any symptoms? Like, there was just so many things that weren't really making sense to me that I just wanted to hold off. And I had heard some rumblings of side effects possible with the vaccine, with heart problems and with blood clots. And both of those things I've had a history with. So that made me nervous. And I thought, I'm really cautious about my body and eating well and exercising. And so I really didn't want to take something that I wasn't sure. Like, I didn't want to get wrapped up in this, fear and oh, we just need to do this to get back to normal. I was really cautious. And so it was about April that year where I got a text from my boss saying, I'd like to chat with you about your vaccine hesitancy. And at the time I was like, what? Yeah. I didn't even realize that was a term, that was the first time I had heard that. Now, of course, people like me have heard that a million times since then. But obviously he had heard through coworkers that I had been chatting with that I was, questioning things. And that was, I guess, not okay. They just wanted everybody to be on the same page. And I understand, I'm a year out now. It was November last year that I actually was my last day. And I can understand as an entrepreneur the situation, where you're in this situation where you really can't win. Somebody's going to lose. That's either, the parents or the staff that are scared and don't want anybody around that's not vaccinated, or you've got me on the other hand who's pushing on the other side. So I can understand where it came from, but it doesn't make it any easier, if you know what I mean.
When all that transpired, like, what was that feeling that came over you?
Oh gosh.
Was it anger? Was it frustration?
I think I
Fear?
went through all of the above. when I got that first text, it transpired as fear. I was terrified of losing my job, even though in my gut, when I got that text, I knew that that was going to be the end game. Like I knew in my gut that I was going to push and hold on as long as I could, but that this was that was where it was going. Not that he had said that, but I just felt that in my gut that I wasn't going to be welcome there. So fear at the beginning, and then sort of as the months went on and we continued this dance of bringing stats and trying to convince, and then I started getting angry because I felt like nobody was listening or caring to my side of the story, and not just my employer, but my doctor. Even calling my doctor and trying to get a medical exemption was the feeling of not being heard, so the frustration. And then anxiety, okay, if my job does go, what am I going to do for money? And then when it did happen, it was like a relief. Like it was such a relief, even though I had no idea where my next paycheck was coming from, which was terrifying, because I'm a person that likes to control everything. And so I think I went through like the gamut of, and then afterwards even like grieving, I write about it in the chapter, how it felt like a death in some regards, because there really was no goodbye. It was work from home for this many months, and then all of a sudden a text like Friday will be Holly's last day, and that was it. Like, so a lot of my coworkers, I never even heard from them again, and I had been there 15 years, so it was like a death a little bit. I had to mourn these relationships and what I thought I knew.
Right. The way you're describing those feelings, it's like the fear, and you touched on this, small businesses going through the exact same thing. What's going to happen? Things are being shut down. Where's the next paycheck coming in? And I think fear is the big thing that was being pushed for the last few years down people's throats in order to have people conform and do what society is asking, essentially, right? And then you mentioned now, when it was all said and done, you had that feeling of relief, right? Like a weight was lifted off your shoulders. So essentially, you felt that freeing feeling, like you were free of something. Like you broke the shackles, you broke the chains, right? So freedom is what I mentioned at the top of the episode, which I want to get into now. Did you have that sense of freedom now? Did you feel that, or did you still feel like you were being judged for sticking to your beliefs?
Oh yeah. So when it happened, I knew this was November of 2021, and I knew that the majority of the world didn't feel the same way I felt. So um, I had to be very careful. I felt like I had to be very careful who I shared the reasons why I was let go. Because I think they positioned it as in, Holly's going to do her own thing now. They didn't really share the reasons why. And it was like I wasn't sure who I could tell, because I didn't know, for fear of the backlash and like you said, of being judged. So that was hard. And it really wasn't until the convoy came through that I realized, like, I'm done being quiet. I think that gave a lot of people the confidence to speak up and say, this isn't okay. And look, it's not just one or two of us, there's millions of us, as we saw when people came out across Canada and stood on the overpasses in the cold.
Yeah.
They really, really tried hard to paint that movement as something very terrible and dark. And so we went to see firsthand, like, okay, is this really what's really happening there? And it was just the most amazing experience getting to be part of it. So
Seeing the videos, seeing kids dancing and singing, bouncing on bouncy castles, pretty much seeing kumbaya in a large circle, you know. It was nice to see, and how it was painted in a darker light. It was very, very unfortunate. Now that being said, because you were there, you were amongst all those people. Do you think that the government overreach is now getting overbearing? Or do you think now things are starting to change now that the Emergency Act Commission is in full swing? Truths are starting to come out. Things that were said before are in reality not true and proven by authority figures.
Yeah. If you asked me like a week ago, I would say, well, maybe I think things are changing for the good. And then, this week we hear Dr. Kieran Moore talking about potentially bringing back mask mandates for the fall, and then it's like, oh no, we're not moving forward. We're really not. It's a cycle. And truthfully, I really feel the people in my life who don't feel the same way I do, they're not reading. They don't want to read. They don't care that things are being debunked. And like I feel like people don't really want to take a deep dive and acknowledge what's happened. And I think these things come out and we hear them and we get excited, but it doesn't really change anything, and here we are again now in a cycle of coming back to mandates this fall. So I don't know what to think. Like it's starting to feel like a bit of a clown world. Like, I can hear like the circus music in my head, because it's like, what are we doing? And how many years are we going to do this?
I think what frustrates me is, like I was saying, like things have been proven that for things not to work, like masks, they don't work. You see these videos where people are wearing masks, double masks, and they take like a vape pen or something and they blow out, and it comes out over almost every crevice that's on your face. It's like it's not working. And like you, I hear that circus song all the time in my head as well, and it's just shake your head, and I'm like, well, now what are we gonna do? You know, but it's people like yourself, people like myself. We need to get together, create these communities that can stand up, have a voice, and educate others on what's truly happening around us. I think that's what it is. I think it's a lack of education. People, a dead fish can go with the flow. There's no fight. You have to go against the grain. Whenever you go against the grain, it is not painful, but that's when change happens.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're doing with this, and what I'm doing with this, and we're doing it together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like people really don't. It's going to be a little bit harsh, but they don't really care until it affects them. Yeah. And they don't really stand up until they realize they don't have anything else to lose. And I think that was part of it too. So losing my job, it was like, well, there's not much else that you can take from me, like I've lost my job. And I was not outspoken when I was in my position. Like I towed the line. I followed all the public health measures. I didn't speak to parents or anybody else I only spoke to a few coworkers that I felt I could trust at the time. Clearly not, because, word got back to my boss that I didn't feel the same way. But I feel like until it starts to affect people. And so, I've talked to people who have taken one or two and have some sort of a vaccine injury, minor or major, and they're like, I'm done now. I see through this. Or I took two and I don't want to take anymore. I didn't feel good after them. They don't work anyway. So it feels a bit like it's almost like these people need to have their own kind of come to Jesus moment, like I did, before they'll see the other side, right? Mm-hmm. And I understand, like I said to my husband, if we had done it and vaccinated our kids and now found out that it potentially could harm them, or there could be some side effects down the road that we don't know about, I wouldn't want to look at it either. Like I would have cognitive dissonance for sure, because I can't change it now that I've done it. And so that's a really hard thing to accept, that you've you've done something that's not changeable. Do you know what I mean? Which is why
Yeah.
I was so hesitant to do it in the first place, because I knew, whatever I do, if I take this, it's permanent. I can't take it out. So
And that was like us as well. Like we wanted to wait and see, what's going on, how this all works, but then hearing how it had to be taken, it was being forced, is what really made us, sit back or take a step back and really question, like, why are you forcing it on people? Isn't it a choice if you want to take it or not? Whether you're making people take it, that raises some red flags, that raises some questions. But now there was one audio snippet that you shared, Holly, and then it really struck a chord with Leah and myself when we listened to it. And I think if you could share a little bit about that, regarding your son and McDonald's,
mhm.
I think the listeners would really like to hear that. Can you
Yeah, so
share that, or you want to wait
no, it's fine. It's good. That was really like, after myself and losing my job, it was really like seeing how all of this was affecting the kids, not just my kids specifically, but all kids. I've worked with children my whole career, and so I have a huge soft spot for kids. And so as I was losing my job, the vax passes were coming into effect in Ontario. And actually, I was told at work, oh, you're never going to be able to go to a restaurant again. You're not going to be able to go to the gym anymore, because they knew how much I loved going to the gym and going out to eat. And I was willing to, like, in my head, I just kept thinking, this isn't forever. This is for now. It's not forever, and I can do anything for now. So but for the kids, it was hard. It was really hard. So my boys at the time were 14 and 16, and my daughter was 7, so it really didn't affect her as much, but my older boys, it did, for sure. So because we chose not to get them vaccinated, so the McDonald's incident was, my son had gone out with friends. They were wandering around the town just hanging out, and had decided to go to McDonald's for dinner. And so they ordered, and of course you needed to show your vax pass to eat at the tables in McDonald's. And so all of his friends sat down, and he was like, oh, i I can't stay. And so he left and ate his dinner. He was just going to eat it outside, but it was raining, so he actually took it to the bus shelter in front of McDonald's and ate it by himself in the bus shelter. So two things: the one, that a place like McDonald's would have a health pass, of all places, was not lost on me. But also the fact that not one of his friends said, I'll come eat with you outside, that spoke volumes about the friends as well. He really had it the hardest. He had to give up hockey because he wasn't allowed in the rink. He was invited to a friend's cottage in the summer, and then disinvited when they found out that he wasn't vaccinated. And they actually said, if he goes today, he could get his 2 doses in by the time we go. And I was like, yeah, no, if he hasn't got it by now, he's not getting it just to go to someone's cottage. We'll go to our own cottage. We'll figure that out.
Mhm.
But that was like the extent of, Halloween last year was probably, him being 14. It was probably the last time he would have gone out with friends. And they were all going to go out trick-or-treating for the last time. And at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they changed the plans, and they decided they were just going to go back to someone's house and watch a scary movie. And he was not allowed to be there because that parent wouldn't let him in the house because he wasn't vaccinated. So it was just awful.
You look at that on a grander scale, and you got to ask the question, what has happened to humanity? You know, like, why is that not allowed? That you've known each other for years, and many families have been torn apart by this. And there was you probably remember that Toronto Star headline? No, it wasn't a headline, it was a front page with the people quoting, if you didn't get it, they should die, and this all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
What has happened to humanity as a whole when you look at that, you know?
Well, so it's interesting because, yeah, when you looked at those headlines, like, oh gosh, I'm sure it made you feel the same way. It made me feel like a pit in your stomach. Like, this is how people actually feel about this personal medical choice that I'm making for my family. Like, this is
Yeah,
crazy. Um, but at the same time, I felt like once I started to speak my mind and be open to my views, people started coming into my life like crazy. Like, just like, I've met so many people, as I'm sure you have in the last year, where like you didn't know these people before, and yet the quality of the relationships is like so pure and so true. And
yeah,
it's like you almost, it's like you've been through a trauma together, so you don't even need to talk about it. You just know that they understand how you feel because they've walked in those shoes too. Maybe not the exact same experiences, but
yeah,
something very similar, you know? So it's like almost like a bond, I feel like. And I don't want to say like these are my people, because you know, I would hope everybody's my people, but definitely there are people I've met in the last year that I feel closer to than people I've known my whole life at this point.
yeah.
So I just try to focus on those relationships, and with the people who have sort of fallen away because we don't see eye to eye, um, I just try to give them gratitude, you know, and like, they don't know. They don't see what we see. It's almost like we're living in two different dimensions, standing side by side, that they just can't see. We just don't even see. And nothing felt more clear about that than my boss when, you know, I finally said to him, you and I are standing like this, and we're looking at two different worlds, and we are never going to see eye to eye on this ever. Clearly you're not budging and I'm not budging, so this relationship is not going to work.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
As you move forward, it's just like how does, as a society, how do we move forward? How do we move on? How do we move past this? Will we ever get past it? You know, like the rest of the world's moving on, but for some reason Canada is still talking about it, living in the past. You know, if you live in the past, you're dying. You're not growing, you're not moving forward, right? Which is very unfortunate. So when you look at things now, or when you look back on things now, like what would you do differently if you knew that you wouldn't be judged? Like, would you do anything differently?
Oh, um that's a good question. Well, I probably would have been more outspoken and questioning things more openly, both at work and just in life. Even now, like, I don't say too much to friends and family. Like, I don't try to convince people of seeing it any other way than what they see it. Maybe if I felt like I wouldn't be judged, then I would, but I feel like it's almost just not worth the time to
Mm-hmm.
put in. You know, there was a time I felt like maybe last year there was a time to try to convince people, and now people have made up their minds. You know, if you've taken it and that's where you stand, then you're gonna might be change your mind eventually, but you're going to come to that on your own terms. It's not up to me to
Right.
change.
Yeah.
um I think I would just live with more confidence. You know, if you knew you weren't being judged in life at all, everybody would live with way more confidence.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So with everything that you've experienced, how do you look at parenting now? Like, have you changed your style? Now, it might be an odd question to ask, but with everything that's happened, you know, parents, you know, big Papa Bear, big Mama Bear, come out in defense of their children, right?
Hmm.
So, has things changed for you, parenting wise?
Yeah, I think that as parents, you always feel like maybe somebody knows better than you. You always question whether you're doing things the right way, or, you know, am I damaging my child by making this decision for them specifically?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and now I have like complete confidence in my own decision making in regards to my kids, because I just listened to my instinct, you know, and that whole time, like, even when I was like, I don't know, should I do this? Like, I'm getting so much pressure to take this vaccine. the whole time it was like a no, not ever, don't touch the kids, like I remember saying that to my husband because he was like, well, I'm not sure. He questioned it for a lot longer than I did. But right off the bat, I was like, the kids, no, not happening. They're not at risk. We don't know the long-term side effects. We don't know how it could affect their health down the road. Not happening. And so, even when it comes to school now, I'm not convinced that, especially in a public school. My husband's a public school teacher, and I'm not convinced that necessarily the school board, the district, the trustees, I don't feel like those people that are making decisions have the best interest of the children um, at heart. So I'm pretty confident in my own ability now to make those decisions for my kids. And if it were to go sideways, I would be like, okay, we're out. My kids are in a Catholic high school, and every day it's like, I think, is this the right decision? Yeah, I guess for right now it is, but I know there's a line that as soon as it crosses this line, okay, we're out. We'll figure something else out.
Right. Yeah, we homeschool our kids, and Kiara and Mackenzie, they're 9 and 6 now, and we've homeschooled them for a few years, and they're thriving. Yeah, there's a little bit of a transition period, because your life is pretty much changing because you're seeing your kids now every single day. But Leah is loving it. She's with them all the time, having a blast, and you see that in how they act, how they talk. Where we use Technotutor. It's a support tool that increases their vocabulary, their comprehension, and their understanding. And I've told you this before, Holly. They're wanting to see you.
Yes.
And when you sit down with them and have a conversation with them, you're going to be like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
It's been so long, but yeah, when I mention your name to them, it's like, oh, I want to see Holly. I want to see Holly again.
I know. I got to come and see them. They were in my cooking class before the pandemic, right? That's how we really
Yes,
got to know each other. Yeah. Yeah,
yes, and yeah, they've changed a lot.
I'm
So,
sure. Yeah.
um, so now let's get to the really deep stuff. Let's get to know Holly. You just mentioned your cooking class. Can you
Mhm.
shed some light on your cooking classes? What you do exactly with that?
Yep. So before the pandemic, I used to run cooking classes for children after school, like as an after school program and for March break camps and things like that. And I loved it. And of course, the pandemic hit and we got shut down. Um, and then I did a little bit online during the pandemic, which was okay. I still love doing the in person as well, but there was a lot to be said for kids cooking in their own kitchen, learning how to use their own tools. And actually, when we do a class together, we'll create one dish and we'll all sample it. So they just get a little taste of it. When we do a class online, they're making that whole dish and get to then turn and serve it to their family, which is you can't replicate that in a class. So the pride that they feel and so anyhow, once I lost my job, I thought, okay, I need to really like figure out what I'm going to do here. And I was a bit terrified because I didn't know, because of the shame of my decision and the judgment that we talked about.
Yep.
I didn't know if parents would support me, sending their kids to my classes, or if they would be afraid to send them because of my decision. But I decided to rent space in a public building and reopen my cooking classes. So I did that, and it was great. It was so great. But I thought, okay, how can I expand this? This is doing so well, but I can only take 8 children per class because of the space, and I can only do this many days a week because of time. So how can I expand this? And I was thinking, well, maybe I'll open a second location and I'll hire someone and train them. And but truthfully, it was when the convoy went down and the Emergencies Act was invoked. I said to my husband, okay, we need to figure out how to make this business bulletproof, because I don't want to be shut down again. And I want to have a business where I can take it anywhere. So if we need to leave, and move somewhere else, I'm not dependent on those parents that are here in town or that location that I've paid for. And so that's where my Nourish Cooking Company online school idea came from. So that kind of like encompassed everything. It was like I can reach all of these kids that can't get to my class, or because I can't take because I don't have any space left. But I can also serve the purpose for my family where we could take this anywhere and film from anywhere, and because it's all virtual.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, so that's how that idea came to be, and it's been
Oh,
pretty amazing.
that's awesome that you're doing that for the kids, because it's a skill that not a lot of kids are being shown in schools, to be honest, right?
Oh, not at all. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And so they're getting the hands-on, they're learning, different portion sizes, how to read measuring cups, and Mackenzie's doing some baking with me, and I'm trying to show her what's a quarter cup, what's a half a teaspoon, stuff like that, so she's getting it and she's wanting to learn, so then it's great to be baking with her too, so it's
Yeah,
awesome.
and it's great because you have the time to do that. And a lot of parents who are still stuck in the rat race, of the work day and the school day and all that, they don't have the time to do it with their kids, I find. So I'm hopeful that the platform that I'm using will allow parents who are homeschooling to guide them as to, have some content, um, take the guesswork out of, what are we going to make, or, what have you. So, um, and also for the older kids, they'd be able to do it on their own with minimal guidance from their
Right.
parent. But the idea is it is for parents for younger kids to do it with their kids, so that it's a bonding thing, it's a learning thing. I just think of those memories of cooking with my grandmother, and how often does that happen in this day and age? Probably not enough. So if this is a catalyst to get people back into the multi-generational cooking, or the cooking with your parents, or I think it's so important. So
I think with everything that's happening in the world today, a lot more parents are starting to ask questions and look for different alternatives to education, to cooking, to different life skills, trying to learn different things. I am going to include Holly's cooking class information in the description below, all her socials. So if there's anybody who wants to reach out to Holly, by all means, do it. I've been following Holly on Facebook and Instagram, and she's pretty much like a celebrity. Okay, I'm seeing photo shoots, I'm seeing videos, I'm seeing she's posing, doing all this. I'm like, wow, all right, awesome, that's great. It's great to see. So that's Holly on that. That's moving on for you. That's great to see.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, the other thing about the class is I started off feeling like, oh, I should just offer, how to make this recipe. And then um, it quickly transformed to, no, I got to teach these kids from like an early age how to be self-reliant, how to be independent, how to be less dependent on the systems that we grew up in. So teaching them how to make things from scratch, how to make their own bread, how to make their own salad dressings, their own ketchup, mayonnaise, all of these things that like we don't even think about making them from scratch at our age. You're just like, oh, I don't know, we've always gone to the grocery store for that. But now we're seeing, oh, I can't get that at the grocery store. There's a shortage on sriracha, like,
Yeah,
oh, well, you don't need to buy that stuff at the store. You can make it all from home. And, teaching them gardening, how to grow vegetables, how to grow their own herbs, um, just all of the things to help them be more self-sufficient. And if a byproduct of that is the parents are learning as well, then it's perfect.
exactly. And the parents are there with the child, so it helps them, it guides them, and that's what a child needs. They need that. They need that guidance to help them move forward and advance and succeed down the road, right?
Definitely.
So what gets you excited about life? So what gets Holly up and out of bed?
Well, it's funny because in my book I was writing like back to 2019, 2018, where I felt like I was stuck in this rat race of life. I had 2 jobs, 3 kids. You're just in this like go, go, go sort of hamster wheel, and I said to myself, is this all there is? Like, this sucks. I love my family, but this life is not fun. It's just constant go. um and now it's like, not the way I would have chosen to get here, but now I have this life of complete balance. Like, my husband will be like, oh, it's Friday today, and I'm like, oh, is it? Like, I don't even think of it in terms of weekends, weekdays, because now I love what I'm doing. I'm in control of my own time. I have all this balance in my life. I was chatting with a former teacher at the school. We used to run and get up and do workouts together at 5 o'clock in the morning before school. And she said, oh, I have a new wake up time at 7 a.m. I said, oh, me too, because we don't have to get up and fit that in
Right.
before your workday. And so that's what gets me excited, is like, I feel like this is just the beginning of this new life, and all of these people like us that are like-minded, we can all see and feel this like vision coming of new systems, new ways of being, new ways of paying for things. Like, I think I get excited about the change, that's coming.
Nice, nice, and you're living your life, and which is an excellent segue into my next question. And how would you explain the difference between living and existing?
That's a really good question.
I've been told I ask deep questions, and so there you go. There you go.
It is good. I think that most people are just existing. And, you can see it when you walk through a mall, a grocery store. Like, people are just so checked out. Um, so to me, that is existing the way I used to live, where you would, again, it was like the work to make money, to pay the bills, to have the house, to then what, retire, like, um, and then live your life when you're, how old, and
Yeah,
can't, we watched that with my in-laws. They waited to live their life, and then as soon as they retired, my father-in-law got sick, he lost his leg, they're not able to travel easily anymore because of that. It's like you wait and then things happen. So um I think now I'm starting to learn how to live, like, and it's really about being present in every moment, and really noticing things about the world around you instead of just flying through.
and I couldn't agree with you more. We are like that as well, because when you're here currently, like in your current breath, I like to say, you're living, and I mentioned earlier, you think about the past, you think about those things, they can be painful memories, you and that, kind of controls you how you're running your current life. So when you think about the past, you're dying, and then you think about the future, you're thinking about something you can't control. It's just like, oh, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about this. Well, it's not happened yet. Why don't you just be here in the now, be in the moment, enjoy where you are, you know,
Yes.
be with your kids, have a great experience with whatever you're doing, jump out of a plane, or with a parachute, of course. With with other things, like that's living. Existing is just, doing
The
what
day to
you're
day.
told. Yeah, what you're told, what you need to do to survive, and it's just,
Yes.
I don't know. That's how I would define the difference between the two of them. So like you and I, we think alike with that. So which is great. Uh,
And the whole idea of manifesting your future, that's exciting. That's living, thinking about, like, the world is, your oyster kind of thing, and not just, limiting it to, well, I can't move because my kids are in this school, or my kids are involved in this sport, or, we'll have to do that after the kids move out. Now it's like, I don't know, you want to go spend 6 months in Florida? Okay, we can do that.
yeah, we speak things into existence. So if you say, oh, I can't do it because such and such, and it's like, well, you're telling yourself you can't do it. So don't talk like that. Speak more positive. It's like, I can do this. It's going to happen. I don't know when. I don't know how. It's going to happen.
Right, just detaching from the process, and letting go of the control.
Exactly.
It's
Be
hard
in
to
the
do.
moment. It's
Yeah.
it's not easy. It's a process. But once you start, going through that process, you realize, like, wow, this is a great feeling. that,
Mhm.
that freedom feeling, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So we're getting on in time here, so I got a few more questions for you. If you could instill one piece of advice to a child now, what kind of advice would you give?
Trust your instincts.
Boom, mic drop right
Yeah.
there. You
That
have a
was
mic
my
there,
biggest
Chance?
lesson. Yeah. That was my biggest lesson this year was I really, I questioned because I had people talking in my ear all the time about, why you need to do this, why you need to do this. And I would sit with myself and just say, am I doing the right thing? And the voice I would hear over and over in my head was, yep, you're doing the right thing. Don't change it, and
Mhm.
I look at where I would be if I hadn't done it and stayed where I was, and like what a different life. I would have been stuck back, you know, no growth, no freedom, all of the things. So yeah, just teaching kids how to tap into that voice inside of them and tell them to trust that voice no matter what.
Right. So I'm moving from kids to parents now. Is there any advice you can offer to other parents who've gone through very similar experiences and are afraid to speak up for fear of reprisal?
I would say, what do you have to lose? you know, what are your kids worth to you? Because,
Yeah.
if we don't, nobody knows your kids better than you and what's right for them. So, if this is how you're feeling, then at all costs, I feel like we've got to stand up for the kids. And it's not just about vaccines, with Ontario talking about masks coming back, we need to really determine, is that the best thing for these kids? We know it's not. They're so behind on their learning. I had a teacher tell me that the kids are so behind on reading, and these were kids that were like 6. And so they hadn't lost any school during the pandemic because this particular school didn't shut down because they were under a different license, sort of a daycare situation. So I thought, well, those kids hadn't lost any schooling. How can they be so far behind? Um, but everybody was in masks. So when you're learning language and reading, and then you can only view someone from here, there's got to be
Mm-hmm.
consequences to these measures that we've taken, and kids that are terrified of germs, terrified of hurting a loved one, bringing something home. Like there's also so much psychological stuff that's gone on as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I strongly urge other parents to reach out to Holly, reach out to myself. There are communities out there that, you know, are there to support others through difficult times. Don't think that you're alone, that you don't need to be scared because someone's gonna judge you in a bad light. These are your choices and you have that freedom of choice.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to talk more about that, again, reach out to Holly, reach out to myself, have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Just have a conversation. Like when me and Holly sat down for the first time one-on-one, it's like we were talking for about 2.5 hours. And it's just refreshing, and it's a breath of fresh air, and I think that's something that a lot of parents need, especially in this day and age, right?
Yeah, and just know that I think a lot of people think, oh, my kid's in public school and I can't afford to do anything else. And um, once you start talking to people that have similar values and views as you start to realize, no, it's possible. There are so many different options out there right now. There's always options for parents if they're not happy with the way things are going.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do your research, and we can guide you to different things. Um, Last question, Holly. When does the Sovereign hit bookshelves? How can people get their hands on it?
Good question. So we just finished our pre-sale, which was basically, it was like a limited edition of the book. However, I ordered extra copies, so I will have copies personally that people could purchase from me, and I'll mail them out to them. So they can reach me at Instagram or from nourishcookingcompany.com, which you'll put in the description. They can find me there too.
Yep.
And then I believe it hits the stores in January. So if you're looking for it, it's like mid-November now. If you're looking for it from now till Christmas, you're better off contacting me directly. And then I believe once January comes, you'll be able to get it on Amazon. So it's amazing. There's 15 of us, and every single chapter is completely different. Some really have nothing to do with COVID at all. It's just this journey to personal freedom that they've come through their entire life. But there is a chapter in there that will resonate with everyone, whether it's entrepreneurship, losing your job, family, marital, all kinds of, like, there's just childhood trauma. Like there's so many stories in there. It'll just, yeah, it's a really great book.
Many people can relate to these stories, which is a lot of us need right now.
Yeah, and I think it'll make people feel like they weren't crazy and that they're not alone.
Exactly, and that's what we were just saying earlier. It was like, you are not alone. Don't ever think that. Just reach out. There are people like us out there that will be there to support you and lift you up. And I highly recommend that if you do want to get one of these books, to get it from Holly, support her. Support the small businesses like we were talking about earlier. I'll support you any day, Holly. No problem.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's it for this episode of the Spehar Initiative. Hopefully you listeners out there got some nuggets in this episode. If you want more information, all of the links for Holly will be in the description below. All of my links, contact information will be in the description below as well. Holly, best of luck to you in your future endeavors. I look forward to seeing you on the National Book Tour.
Thank you.
Books, right?
Absolutely. Thanks, Rob.
No problem, Holly. Everybody out there, stay safe, enjoy your life, and we'll talk to you soon. See ya.